It's another Browns win, one step closer to the playoffs. Speaking of playoffs, fantasy football playoffs in full swing. We got a big show. Let's get to it. The Sick Podcast with Andy McNamara starts now.
Turn up your volume. Because you're about to listen to The Sick Podcast with Andy McNamara, the sickest Cleveland Browns podcast.
In the backfield, Latavius Murray. Huntley takes the shotgun snap. Back to pass. Looks. The ball got stripped away. In the air. The Browns fight for the ball. And it's picked up by Myles Garrett. He's going to score. Touchdown.
It's going to be sick.
All right, everybody. Another Browns win. Another cardiac kids-esque victory for the Cleveland Browns. I'm Andy McNamara. Holy cow. Unbelievable. That reaction video that I do after every game on the Sick Podcast with Andy McNamara right here on YouTube. If you subscribe, on Twitter at SickPodBrowns, at AndyMC81, of course, TikTok and Instagram too, at AndyMCSports. I thought for sure it was done. And that's what I love about this team. It's never really done. Like, how many times have we come on this year and been like, oh man, that was it. You're down 17-7, looked flat. It's like, oh, Flacco just signed a contract. Okay, now he starts to decline. Here we go. And then it didn't. And then the defense held on. And then the kick, the Hopkins, especially big play on special teams came up. And you got it done. Joe Flacco, 212 yards in the fourth quarter. You kidding me? Are you kidding me? No other Browns quarterback on the roster could do that. He's not perfect, not by a long shot. We know it. We know that. He's 38 off the couch and he's not mobile. 3 picks. Second time in his career he threw a 3-interception game and came back. But that's what I've been saying. Nothing surprises this guy. What's he been called through his career? Joe Cool. He could throw 3, doesn't matter, out of his mind. And he leads those drives. Those throws to Njoku and Cooper, my goodness. The tight window. The one where it went right through the receiver's hands, where it was literally like the size, just bigger than the size of a football. And he put it through. Unbelievable. Flacco fever, wacko for Flacco, whatever the heck you want to call it. Absolutely sensational. We're talking Browns. We'll be giving out dog bones. We'll be looking ahead to Houston this week. Next biggest game of the year as the Browns try to clinch a playoff spot. We'll be looking at those playoff clinching scenarios this week. You take a lot, but we'll look at them. And then, of course, fantasy football, playoff, under-the-wire, waiver-wire pickups, and some dynasty looks with my guy Dan Toomey, who's going to be coming up, actually, right now from Dynasty Nerds. Dan, friend of show. He is back with us to talk some Browns, Cleveland Browns fan, fantasy football expert from Dynasty Nerds. Let's bring Dan up now. Dan, how's it going, brother?
Awesome, Andy. Awesome. Thank you. Thank you for having me. We were just talking real quick before pre-show. It's not often as a Browns fan you get so many Victory Mondays to break down. I know you saw on socials your coffee mug. It's getting a little worse for wear with so much use this year. I know. I'm gonna need a new one from Cleveland Clothing. It's been in immaculate condition the last couple of years. Dan, it's fine. It's there. You have to sometimes rinse it out because there's dust in it. But no, it is getting worked. It's pretty sweet. It's almost like a daily driver at this point.
That's right. It was quite a victory. And again, what is starting to stand out to me, Dan, is with all the good teams over the years we've seen them. And you look at the record, and after the year, you don't really remember how you win. But if you look at the teams that the wins Kansas City gets, Baltimore, Pittsburgh over the years, Buffalo, whoever, there are so many games like this where they're ugly, but you find a way. And the Browns have never been able to find that way. They're the Chicago where the ball's bumbling up in Darnell Mooney's and someone else gets it and you lose, but not this year.
Yeah. You know, what's funny is you say that. And my first thought about old Browns versus new Browns was that playoff game against Kansas City when Rashad Higgins extends the ball to the goal line. And, that was kind of the end of that game. And new look Browns, the ball, it falls the other way. And, Darnell Mooney doesn't hold on. And, we secure that W. But it's never easy. It's never just, easy Sunday. Here we go. It's always something. But, that's what keeps us coming back every week, is that excitement, that feeling of being alive. So amazing win this past week.
It really is. 9-5 top wildcard spot. Let's take a look. Let's give out some dog bones here after that victory against the Bengals. Yeah, and Dan, I'm not going to put anyone in the doghouse today. No doghouse. It's empty. Everyone's clear. Everyone's out. You overcome that. A dog bone, I think, for somebody this week and over the past month, JOK, like, Dan, this guy is playing at an absolutely unreal level. We talked about Myles Garrett, and we'll get to his Defensive Player of the Year hopes coming up. But JOK, especially against mobile quarterbacks, which is why you drafted him, this guy's getting like the triple-double stats of football. He's getting sacks. He's tackling for losses. He's everywhere.
Yeah. JOK has been unreal this year, just all over the place. And like you said, what we loved about him coming out of Notre Dame was he was like that, mobile quarterback, but on the defense. And obviously playing in a division with Lamar Jackson, you think, okay, we said at the time, we're drafting this guy to counteract Lamar, but now we're seeing with the increase in the mobile quarterback, with your Justin Fields, with your Anthony Richardsons, that a player like JOK is becoming that much more important. And it just goes back to Andrew Berry. Like, he's been just nailing these draft classes year after year. We're coming on to, I think his first draft class is about to reach the end of their rookie contracts. We saw Delpit get a big extension already. Like, there's not that many players, outside of maybe Jedrick Wills, that we are not going to be re-signing going to the future, which is a hallmark of a world-class general manager.
Yeah, and I think we got to give some dog bones to Kevin Stefanski with the offensive line. Let's hope that, my goodness.
I was actually going to say, if I could give a dog bone out, Bill Callahan, if they had an award for coordinator or assistant coach of the year, Bill Callahan, he does it every year. If you've been a Browns fan for a while, he's taken mud and turned into gold. I mean, let's not forget Wyatt Teller. He was he cut from the Bills, or we sent like a 6th rounder or something?
It was like a 5th, 6th round pick. He was just like like
a throwaway, and he's turned him into an all-pro, lineman. And thank God he is, because he was the only one on the field on Sunday. Like, we were down to 3rd, 4th string right tackle, 3rd string center, backup left guard, backup left tackle. Like, it just doesn't phase Bill Callahan, because he's got these players playing so great. We saw Blake Hance recently, and though that name sounds familiar, that's the guy that was on the Jets practice squad that we called up during the COVID playoff game.
That's right.
And he drove to Pittsburgh, didn't even fly. He literally drove to Pittsburgh. Bill spent 5 hours with him, and he helped us beat the Steelers. So
had a great game.
If I had to give a dog bone out, it's definitely Bill Callahan for the work he's put in this season.
I'm with you. Hopefully, let's hope Dan a little less work this week with hopefully Bitonio, and he was listed as day-to-day back spasm, so those can flare up, but hopefully manageable. Poach should again be back. Hopefully, it was like the next stinger, so that's kind of an in between. If you get those guys back against Houston, then we're starting to feel pretty good about that O-line. And let's flip it to the defensive side too, where you had Obo go out, right? We had all those injuries, and who's Alex Wright? You talk about Andrew Berry trap it. Hey, Alex Wright, go get a sack. Does it? Like, it's this mentality. Jim Schwartz. And it has to be coinciding with all the winning. But, Dan, we've just never seen it. We're the team where guys get hurt like this in December, and it's just, you're done, and it's unwatchable. Not this year.
Yeah. And the injuries are just a plague across the league right now. And you can see how it really shows you coaching staffs around the league, how they're dealing with these injuries. Some teams are kind of folding and let the injuries be the end of the season. Some teams are thriving. I mean, every time I see people talk about coach of the year, Shane Steichen, like, oh, he lost his rookie quarterback. Like, please stop it. We lost.
So what?
We're on our 4th quarterback, like you said, we signed Joe Flacco off the couch.
Yeah.
We're getting production out of him. I mean, unfortunately, Stefanski's name is not as loud as it should be in the coach of the year conversation, but I think people do overlook how injury this season has been for the Cleveland Browns. Yeah,
to do this and not just squeak in a 7th seed right now. Playoffs start today. You'd have the top wildcard spot. Shane, let's bring up that graphic. Let's see what the Browns can do this week to clinch a playoff spot. And if it all doesn't, that's a bit of a it's a lot. But even if it doesn't happen this week, then you keep winning. We have the Texans in Houston, back home Thursday night against the Jets, then last game of the season in Cincinnati. So Browns clinch a playoff spot if they win, if Denver loses or ties, if Indy loses and ties, Buffalo lost, Miami tie, and then you can look at the rest.
Yeah, and we were saying before the show that this Texans game is so important because it secures tiebreakers over everyone in the AFC South.
Yeah.
So that leads to a scenario where we don't actually care who wins this division. Not to talk about doom and gloom, but if we were to lose to the Texans this week, our rooting interest would change, and we would actually want the Texans to win that division.
Yeah,
because then we still have tiebreakers over Indy and Jacksonville. But can we just say, like, when was the last time we talked about a playoff clinching scenario?
COVID with 2020.
And even that week, it was that Maserati call. It was like, Baker in the fourth quarter, like last play, like that was not a sure thing at all. Even playing against Steelers, second, third string players. So to have this talk early December, it's a new look, and I like it.
It's a new look. I like it too. It's great. Flacco, just unflappable, getting it done. And really, again, and what stands out to me too, Dan, is everyone like this. Everyone like this, where you suffer injuries coming into the game, during the game, you're down 3 picks. This team now can confidently go into any scenario in a game and point to it and say, we can win this. And again, this is a new thought for Browns fan who is like, okay, we always lose these. Well, now it's like, no, we can win this. Dustin Hopkins lines up. I'm feeling confident. I'm not feeling scared. Like it's new, it's so different.
Yeah.
It's a wild thing. And how nice is it? I got to say, how nice is it for the Pittsburgh Steelers quarterback disaster, chaos? You're going to Mason Rudolph. Have fun with that, Pittsburgh. That sounds like a great old time. I love it. I hope they finish below 500 and miss the playoffs. And we got to stick it to them. Just get them off their high horse all the time. They rub and have had so much success. This will be great. I hope it's a total calamity for them. It's just so messy. And you know what? If we look at the fantasy side real quick, Dan Toomey, of course, from Dynasty Nerds, this really is a case where is there that much of a fantasy drop-off when you look at the ineffectiveness of Kenny Pickett, Mitch Trubisky, and Mason Rudolph? Because Dan, I'm seeing that old Spider-Man meme where it's like the same Spider-Man's pointing at each other. It's the same guy. Like, does that really affect George Pickens?
Yeah, I mean, that Pittsburgh team is so hard to get a read on because outside of analytics and statistics and everything, like, just the lack of effort we've seen the past couple of weeks, like that Cincinnati game, Deontay Johnson not even going after the fumble, George Pickens last week hanging his head low. We talk about how Mike Tomlin is a Hall of Fame coach and his record for keeping these teams above 500 and, dealing with head cases like Antonio Brown and, Juju Smith-Schuster and Chase Claypool. And those attitudes really not popping off till after they leave, Pittsburgh. It's kind of like there's like a crack in the foundation as far as the attitude goes.
Yeah.
We saw them fire Matt Canada. They haven't fired an assistant midseason in I think it's since the 80s or something crazy like that.
Yeah.
So fantasy wise, it's very, very hard to say what this Pittsburgh team is going to be because, when Mitch came in, I thought it was a nice bump for Deontay Johnson because they had a nice connection. We saw the splits between Kenny Pickett and Mitch Trubisky were in Deontay Johnson's favor, but now we're bringing in Mason Rudolph. And I feel like this game last week wasn't enough data to collect. And let's be honest, if you're in your fantasy football playoffs this year, I mean, right now, this week, you are a top 4 team in your league. I'm guessing you have a very strong roster. And I hope that Deontay Johnson and George Pickens aren't cracking your starting lineup.
Right.
Obviously, we talk dynasty, we talk deeper rosters and different things happen. But I feel like Steelers are a void for the rest of the season. Unless Jaylen Warren seems to produce no matter what. The only question is whether he's going to get the workload to be super fantasy relevant. We've seen him be efficient on small sample sizes, but unfortunately the Steelers still have a give the ball to Najee Harris problem because I hate to say it. You see some clips on film from the past week and just the vision's not there. He's not looking very good.
Flat. Yeah. He's totally flat. So it's an avoid, really, if you can, for these fantasy playoffs. And we'll get to some dynasty top. Let's pull up a tweet we got, and you can send out, of course, your questions anytime on Twitter at SickPodBrowns, at AndyMC81, at DanT_NFL. we'll bring up the hashtag Ask Andy question. And you can get on Instagram and TikTok at AndyMC Sports too. And of course, leave questions, subscribe to the channel here. So from our buddy at that ex Ruin Griff says, I made it this far with Breece Hall and Eckler, but can I trust them this week? My other options are Zamir White and Ty Chandler. Which two would you start in PPR? This is really interesting to me, Dan. And I think really it comes down to the injury designation for Josh Jacobs with the Raiders and Alexander Mattison for the Vikings.
Yeah, and I was actually talking to somebody at work about this before, and one thing you have to think about, and you have to kind of go beyond fantasy football for this and think about like the league as a whole. Mm-hmm. What do the Chargers want out of these last couple of weeks of the year? You know, Justin Herbert, I haven't seen any news, but hopefully they're shutting him down for the rest of the year. You just fired your general manager that's been there for 11 years. You just fired Brandon Staley. What is that organization thinking is going to be happening the next few weeks? Now, if for me personally, my goal the next few weeks is to decide who is a Charger in 2024. And I hate to say it, I don't think Austin Eckler has a future with that team. I don't know if you've seen, I'm big into team building. I'm always thinking about the draft and things, but the Chargers are currently like $48 million projected over next year's cap. And that includes cap hits of Khalil Mack, $34 million, Keenan Allen, $33 million, JC Jackson, who's not even on the team anymore, for $20 million. Yeah. So there is going to be a gigantic roster turnover in Los Angeles. And if I'm the front office there, I want to use these next 3 weeks to determine, hey, who are my core pieces? Who am I going to build on going into 2024? And Austin Eckler is not in that conversation. Mm-hmm. You watch him and he's definitely lost a step. He's not looking quite as explosive. And even that offense with Easton Stick is not putting up any points. And I hate to say, but if Eckler's not finding the end zone this week and next week, like what is he getting for you fantasy?
Right. Exactly.
7-8 points in full PPR, maybe. And that, like I said, do they want to see more out of Isaiah Spiller? Do they want to see more out of a Joshua Kelly to get more data and tape to determine if those are their guys next year? Because I don't think Eckler is going to be there. So like you said, let's keep our eye on injury reports. It's only Tuesday, still early in the week, and Jacobs didn't play, but definitely watch for any press releases coming out of Los Angeles about how this coaching staff is approaching the rest of the season. If you see any wording like evaluation, find out what we have in the room, it's going to be a dog whistle for we're going to start sitting some of these veterans and try to figure out what the younger kids have when it comes to next year's class. Yeah,
committees, and then it gets real messy, right? And plus too, you mentioned Easton Stick, good Lord. Like and they're pulling up guys like EJ Perry from practice. Like this quarterback situation, it really downgrades everybody, right? It downgrades all the receivers.
And on top of that, they're also facing Buffalo, who, their defense looked amazing this week against Dallas, which was up until this week, one of the higher scoring offenses in the league. So, God, Easton Stick, not it.
not great. So I think, okay. So let's say we hear the evaluate. I like what you're saying there with Eckler. Let's say we want to park Eckler. But let's say for fun that Josh Jacobs and Madison are available in at least split roles. Even though the Jets stink, I'm okay playing Breece Hall. We've seen him produce with him.
Yeah, I agree. I think Breece Hall's a must start out of that conversation.
Yeah, I'm good with Breece Hall. If we have those scenarios where let's say it's Jacobs is going and Madison's going, and then you have Eckler floating there, do you lean one to the other? Because the other two, we saw how impressive they were, and they helped me get through a round of a fantasy playoffs in desperation. I was just blasted with injuries. I got those two on my waiver wires, and they helped me through. But as soon as the starters are back, they can just as easily fall away.
Yeah, exactly. I think Jacobs is the way I would lean, given he's healthy. But I also really like Zamir White as a player. So
yeah.
If Jacobs is out, I feel like Zamir White is kind of a must play.
Yeah.
I will give a little nugget. This is very deep. This is like dynasty deep roster. If you're looking for a desperation flex play,
okay,
I must remind everyone that the Philadelphia Eagles will be playing the New York Giants this week.
Yep.
Which means he's available in a lot of leagues. It's Boston Scott week. Boston Scott doesn't score a lot of touchdowns, but when he does, it's against the New York Football Giants. So listen, this is not your 12-team home league. This is like, you're deep into the depths of dynasty, and you got to fill out your 4th flex spot or something. But hey, and it's also Christmas Day. Have some fun with it. Put Boston Scott in your flex. Gives you something to root for. But if you are looking for a desperation flex play, if the injuries are hitting hard, Boston Scott is my recommendation for this week.
I love the Boston Scott, and you couple that with a anytime touchdown Boston Scott bet.
There you go. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas. You're having a good day. They played the Eagles twice, don't they? Don't they play twice the last 3 weeks?
I do believe. Yeah, they end their. I think week 18 they have Philadelphia again.
Interesting.
Yeah.
What a weird thing, but it happens all the time. So okay. Let's go over a couple Browns Texans fantasy plays. We'll get to some dynasty stuff, and we'll wrap this bad boy up. Devin Singletary for the Texans has emerged as a lead back. Damian Pierce, who, boy, Dan, I love this guy coming into the year. What a total flop. He is just white, just done. Devin Singletary's taken over that backfield. CJ Stroud, still concussion protocol, but he's practicing. I think we should assume that he will be playing. You have Noah Brown in. We know Tank Dell's out. Nico Collins floating. Like, this is an interesting Texans team where I want some shares on the fantasy side, but it could just as easily, with Denzel Ward healthy, shutting down a top wideout, be an ugly day fantasy-wise for Houston.
Yeah, and watching the Browns all season, like, do we say that our cornerback trio is the best in the league? Is that too much?
It's right there.
Like, I mean, Newsome, we've seen so much good play out of Emerson Jr. this year.
Yeah. Cameron Mitchell with a nice trip up, the rookie.
Andrew Berry is going to have a very tough conversation this offseason with those 3 guys.
Yeah.
It's like, listen, I love all 3 of you. I definitely don't have the money to pay all 3 of you. But that we could have a conversation in the spring about what Andrew Berry is going to do regarding that. But it makes me worry for all the Houston pass catchers, fantasy-wise. Like you said, keep an eye on Stroud, see how he's progressing through the concussion protocol. The one thing I will say is the concussion protocol is different for every player.
Yeah.
Most people assume it's like, okay, you miss a week because the NFL requires you to, and then you're back the next week. People deal with concussions very, very differently. It's a very case-by-case basis. I remember I'm a big Roschon Johnson fan for meeting him at the Senior Bowl, and I was excited for him earlier this year to take over that backfield. And just when he was looking good, he caught a concussion, and he actually missed like 3.5 games due to that concussion. So you have to just don't assume, okay, concussion, missed a week, he's out, now he's back the following week. Like, keep a close eye on how he's progressing. If he's practicing on Wednesday, that's going to be the big sign, because as much as we talk about this is a big game for the Browns, this is just a big of a game for the Houston Texans. They're still in the middle of a division title. They far from wrapping that up. And then even if they don't win the division, they're still in the wild card hunt. So they are going to put him out there if they can, but keep a close eye on, any concussion news coming out of Houston this week.
Dalton Schultz might not be a bad play for the Texans as well. Tight ends, we know historically the Browns trouble with the tight end spot. If CJ Stroud's playing, he got next to no love from Case Keenum. And of course, hey, we were talking dog bones earlier, Dan. Let's talk that. David Njoku, absolute rock star with Joe Flacco. 3 touchdowns, just lighting it up. Here's my question for you, dynasty-wise. Is this a sell high time when it comes to, because Joe Flacco will finish the year. We know Deshaun Watson isn't coming back. Is this a sell high time over the next few weeks in offseason on David Njoku if you're an owner? Because I say that because under Deshaun Watson, who is still rust, this, that, he wasn't that guy. It was under a guy like Flacco. I'm wondering if, we can't just assume next year when Deshaun Watson gets back that David Njoku will continue how he's playing right now. We hope, but we can't assume it because we haven't seen it.
Yeah, it's tough. I pulled up the contract because now you have me interested. He's definitely going to be on the team until the 2025 offseason, so we don't have to worry about that. I whenever I get these questions, I always look at the contract first because the money doesn't lie. Follow the money is one of the dynasty sayings we have at Dynasty Nerds. And you are right. The splits between a Deshaun Watson, David Njoku versus let's be honest, anybody else, David Njoku are very different. Yeah, I don't know if it's a sell high though You know, I think we both know David's got a ton of talent.
Oh yeah.
You know, Amari is going to be there. I'm trying to think off the top of my head. He's going to be there for next year for sure. And then
I thought there was an out or some big contract thing with Amari next year where he might not.
Give me 1 second, actually.
I thought because I thought there was, and that's going to be an interesting part of the Browns offseason if I'm remembering correctly. I think there's either a big contract money bump or an out, and they could always renegotiate. Or Amari Cooper's been remarkable.
So the dead cap for Amari's contract goes from $35 million this year to $11 million the following offseason if he's cut. So I think we're going to have a core of Amari, Elijah Moore, David Njoku, and Cedric Tillman, as our receiving group going to next year. So you can kind of, I don't want to say mirror this year's numbers to next year because Deshaun looks, let's be honest, not great.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure if I have a ton of confidence if he's going to get back to that level, that the Haslams thought they were getting when they made this giant move.
Helping the Texans out, by the way, who are playing.
Yeah. So I don't think it's a sell high time for Njoku. I think you're still going to get fantasy production out of him going forward. But I mean, obviously these things are so nuanced depending on where your dynasty team is, what kind of draft capital you have. Are you competing? Are you rebuilding? But listen, if you have a specific situation, a specific Njoku question, I'm happy to answer questions on Twitter at DanT_NFL. I'm always open to answering dynasty questions because it's so hard to give such broad advice with such like a specific league to league type of thing.
Yeah, everything is its own animal for sure. And let's be honest, as we start to see the decline of Travis Kelce, right? He's definitely just on the other side of the peak. The tight end spot gets really thin real quick. We know this. After Kelce, TJ Hawkinson. Now Laporta's been what a hell of a bump for Laporta. Like I would have to think, Dan, where he's drafted, if we're talking like superstars when it comes to dynasty, a Sam Laporta pickup has got to be right near the top because that guy, we don't see rookie tight ends produce. We hold them for a while, and then they show their worth. But this year, my goodness.
Yeah, and so Sam Laporta is easily moving himself into the tight end one conversation. And I hate to say it, but the tight end 2 doesn't play in the NFL right now. You probably aren't into your draft coverage yet, which is acceptable because I'm one of the few crazies that does draft content this time of year. But Brock Bowers, the tight end out of Georgia, is going to be a game changer when he gets into the NFL. He's going to be a top 7 pick in the upcoming NFL draft, and he's going to be an immediate impact player on whatever team he lands on. So not to give away draft coverage way too soon, but December I start to ramp up more and more with draft stuff. And so Brock Bowers is very quickly going to be in the conversation for top dynasty tight end from almost day one.
That's going to be great to pick up, and get some fresh blood in there. Hopefully ramp up that spot. Who's the biggest disappointment before we get you out of here, Dan? Biggest disappointment dynasty wise going into this year, or fantasy football wise coming in, whether it's drafting or somebody who, over the last little bit, it's like not so much. I'll go Dameon Pierce because I fell hook, line, and sinker for this guy.
So I'm going to go more dynasty super flex, with this question, but it's got to be Bryce Young. I mean, it's not only the combination of he didn't hit this year, but the guy picking after you took CJ Stroud, and then you're just watching week after week. Stroud looks so amazing, and that's. Hey, listen, I drafted a lot of Treylon Burks a couple of years ago and a lot of Jalen Reagor the year before that. So I've been in those conversations, every time I think of Jalen Reagor versus Justin Jefferson or Treylon versus Garrett Wilson, I'm reminded of these things.
Right. Just hand in the card, Philly. What a minute.
Yeah. So, so Bryce Young is definitely my biggest dynasty disappointment this year,
Yeah. And I just really don't see a path with him getting better at the NFL level because of that size. Like it's not like you have this, let's face it, how CJ Stroud looks, a 6'3", 215, even like a Justin Fields. If Justin Fields leaves Chicago drafts a QB, goes somewhere else, like you could see a path for Justin Fields under a good coaching staff to get back. We saw some flashy look good to me. On Sunday.
Justin Fields is going to land in a spot next year with maybe not the job, but a chance to earn the job.
Maybe Atlanta, who knows, right? There's lots of spots.
Yeah, well, if it's Atlanta, then we got to get Arthur Smith out of there first.
Yeah, get him. We got Staley out. Get Smith out. What? That is such a depressing fantasy landscape, because if you get competent coaching with the Falcons, like, Dan, the toys are there. Mm-hmm. There's all the toys.
And the defense has good bones. It's a good team, just waiting for the hot name is going to be Ben Johnson, the Lions offensive coordinator. He's going to be the hot, he was the hot hire last year, but he wanted to go back to Detroit and, finish the job. But he's going to be the hot name this year. And, he's going to have his pick of jobs. And it's going to be, does he want to work with Caleb Williams? Does he want to work in a place like Atlanta with all those toys? So that's definitely, for dynasty purposes, pay attention to where he lands, because it's going to be an upgrade for all those assets.
Going to be interesting. Dan, thank you so much, man. Hey, Browns, Texans Sunday road game. We know the Browns have played different on the road this year, not in a good way. Let's hope to get that 10th win, and whatever the formula to clinch a playoff spot happens.
And hey, it's Christmas Eve, so
yes.
What would be a better early Christmas present than a Browns playoff lock-in?
Let's go. All right, buddy. Well, Merry Christmas to you, and tell people where they can, of course, find you. Dynasty Nerds, we know, but plug anything else you need.
Yeah, so most of my stuff winds up on Twitter at DanT_NFL. You can find me there. Stuff over at Dynasty Nerds. I'm launching a new project shortly with my buddy Tim, so keep an eye out around the new year for an announcement on that. It's definitely a lot of draft coverage coming from the two of us this upcoming year.
Excellent. Cannot wait for that. Dan, thank you, man. Merry Christmas. Talk to you soon.
Merry Christmas, Andy. Thanks for having me.
All right, there he is, Dan Toomey from Dynasty Nerds, a new project, so keep an eye out on that. Now, this is he brings up the good Christmas gift on Christmas Eve. Remember during, I don't want bringing up the 1-31 stretch, but in that first season before the winless one, Christmas Eve, and who was it? It was the pierogi prince. Joe Thomas coined him. I'm forgetting the guy's name, the lineman who got the hand at the block, the field goal, and the Browns won on Christmas Eve. And I got to tell you, like many Browns fans, I had a tear in my eye that we got the win. I was like, okay, who knew it would be so bad the following year? But that was a Christmas Eve miracle. Let's have another one, right? This defense. How about Kevin Stefanski talking up, hyping up Myles Garrett? I've never heard Stefanski be so bold and say this is the best defensive player on the best defense. Like, not one of, saying the best. And these officials, disgusting. All across the league, we know the officiating's bad, yada. But the lack of accountability with Roger Goodell in the building. How could Roger Goodell be in the building in Cleveland last week and see those officials and think it's okay? How Myles Garrett's being manhandled and no calls. Disgusting. The guy's been held without a sack 4 games, last 2 games, mainly because of that. And Jim Schwartz is saying, look, this guy's playing the best defense. He's being held. He's being accosted and no calls. Why? Will that change? I hope so. There's got to be something, because Defensive Player of the Year, and I want to know from you guys, do you think that Myles Garrett should be Defensive Player of the Year? We think of it, at least I do, a lot of the time as a sack category. You got X amount of sacks, that's where it's at. That's not all that. We saw Myles bat a ball down. We saw him tackle for losses. We saw him last week get that sack on the 2-point conversion try taken away, right? Like, it's there for him. And Myles Garrett right now is number 2 behind Micah Parsons of Dallas at plus 165. So if you want to make that bet, you can do it from our buddies at DraftKings on the DraftKings Sportsbook app. You use code 6sports, $5 NFL bet. Any NFL type of bet, $5, get you $150 in bonus money. $150 for a $5 bet. You can bet on that. You could also, now especially if the Browns win and get that top wildcard spot, I'd go to the DraftKings Sportsbook app, use code 6sports, and maybe place a little wager on Kevin Stefanski at plus 1,200 for Coach of the Year. My goodness, with all the stuff he's overcome. Please. Leader in the clubhouse, Dan Campbell. I don't know, I wouldn't be surprised by it, but there's a bit of the shine off. Stefanski's winning games on 4 quarterbacks and a busted up offensive line. Come on. Leads the NFL in injuries, first or second. And he's doing all this with that staff. Stefanski's got to be right up there, right? He's got to be right up there. So you can make those wagers at the DraftKings Sportsbook app, code SICKSPORTS. So there you go, guys. We're going to get ready for the Texans. We'll be doing the weekend show and getting ready. Christmas. Remember, there's, for your fantasy lineups, the schedule gets a little wacky, right, with it being Christmas. So we got the Thursday nighter. who is it? Saints. Going to week 16. Saints and Rams. That's pretty boring, but both 7-7, playoff implications, division implications. 7-7 for both teams Thursday. Then Saturday we got 2 Bengals versus Steelers. Can that one be a tie? Mason Rudolph again, that big idiot blockhead, Mason Rudolph. I hope the Steelers front office think Kenny Pickett and Mason Rudolph are their answer at quarterback for the next 5 years. Nothing would make me happier because those guys both suck. Mason Rudolph, what a waste. Then you got the late game, Bills and Chargers. Bills are 10.5-point road favorites. Oh my God. That should be a smash. Just an absolute smash. Light up your Buffalo Bills. And we got all the Sunday games and 3 Christmas Day games. 1 4:30 and 8:15. Raiders Chiefs at 1. Giants Eagles 4:30. Boston Scott game, as Dan brought up. Ravens 49ers, the late game. Let's hope the 49ers can win that one. Give us a little help. The division still within reach. A long shot, but still within reach. All right, that'll do it. Thank you so much for Dan Toomey from Dynasty Nerds for joining us, talking Browns, talking fantasy football strategy. You got any questions? Betting, fantasy football, Browns, you want to vent, whatever. Hit me up on Twitter at AndyMC81, at SickPodBrowns, Twitter or Instagram and TikTok at AndyMC Sports. Of course, click subscribe, notifications on for this channel. Check out 2 great fantasy football league and Christmas gifts. Check out the store. The merch shop for the show is in the show description. You got fantasy football, professional fantasy football player shirt, champion fantasy shirts, Browns gear. Lots of fun. Check that out. Make a great gift. In any case, we will see you next time. Thanks to Dan. Thanks to producer Shane. I'm Andy McNamara. Browns versus Texans Sunday. Let's get that 10th win. Let's go. You've been watching the Sick Podcast with Andy McNamara. Go Browns!
And that's a wrap. Hope you don't miss us too much until next time. Follow the Sick Podcast with Andy McNamara on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Google Play, and Apple Podcasts.